And good afternoon, everyone. TJ Alts of I-45 Now. Welcome to another edition of What You Need to Know, COVID-19, with Dr. Philip Keiser, the local health authority for Galveston County. And this week, covering a myriad of topics here. One right off the bat, Dr. Keiser, we're hearing more and more reports coming out there. Not huge numbers, but about people having adverse reactions to some of the vaccines, including Johnson & Johnson in one state. Where vaccinations are being done. But we're also hearing just in our local area, some folks have been fully vaccinated, but then coming down with COVID-19. I wonder if you can address both of those issues. Let's start with the adverse reactions to the vaccines because some folks are reporting some issues beyond what we'd already expected, the pains in the arm or a little bit of a rash or some being lethargic. But there are some reports now of like almost immediate reactions to the vaccines. Was that expected? And what are we seeing there overall?
Yeah, no, we are seeing vaccine reactions, and it shouldn't be surprising. We vaccinated over 200,000 people. And so it's not surprising that we will see somebody who have reactions. The most common thing I think we see is right after people getting vaccinated is sometimes people feel shaky and they have a rapid heartbeat. Sometimes people have a little numbness around their mouth. Most times that's just anxiety, but not always. And that's why we have an ambulance on hand. And so everybody who has any type of reaction like that is immediately evaluated by paramedics, and a discussion is had. And sometimes we send people to the emergency room. I've had some people come to me and say, well, I really don't want to go to the emergency room. And I go, well, I think you should. But most times, and when I say most times, it's usually something that can be handled right then and there, and people feel better within a few minutes. So, you figure at Walter Hall Park, we're doing, 4,000 vaccines a day, 4,500 vaccines a day. And we have somebody who has that kind of reaction once. And most of the time, 95% of the time, they don't have to go to the hospital. So these reactions are, again, very minimal. They don't happen very often. But just the sheer fact that you vaccinate so many people, it's going to be inevitable that some people are going to have some sort of a reaction.
And on those reactions, did any of this come up with kind of a warning ahead of time through the clinical trials or the like, that these were maybe more adverse reactions than in others? Or was this kind of expected that we're going to see people along the line? Again, not a high number of folks, you pointed out, less than 5%, but that this would be a situation for folks, because people are seeing the reports and they're actually asking us loud, like, well, is it safe? Is it not as safe as we thought? And obviously, given the timeline and everything else, that there are some concerns there.
Right. In all honesty, it's safer than we thought. God's honest truth. We were worried that we were going to have people who would have very serious cardiac reactions, and then we'd have to give them epinephrine. And initially when we set up our first vaccine clinic, and you were there, it was right next to what we call our recovery room. So we have all of the emergency equipment, defibrillators, and everything there right behind the door. And we really haven't had anything like that happen. And so what we're seeing, given the numbers of people, it's not unexpected. And it's not outside the realm or the range of types of symptoms that we were expecting. So overall, I think this is a very, very safe vaccine. And having gone through it, I would do it again if I needed to. And I would certainly recommend it for all my family members. And, I've had some side effects. I felt feverish and tired after my second dose, and my arm was sore, and I had to take some Tylenol. But that's a more typical type of reaction in terms of what we expect to see.
Speaking of which, Kim Estep just sent this in comment. It says, got my second dose of Pfizer on a Saturday afternoon, and I woke up today with a weird rash on my neck. Is that a normal side effect? And should I take an antihistamine, which is, normally if you get a rash or something, you would deal with that and you worry about taking out the full effect of the vaccine. There have been reports of what would be called a vaccine rash. Can you, right. And I wonder if that would be tied into this right now.
Yeah, again, I don't know, and I haven't seen her rash, so to know whether it is that. We have seen rashes, particularly on the arm, where people have gotten the vaccine, and it can last up to about a week. And I certainly would not recommend. I would say it's okay to go ahead and take an antihistamine and see what happens. But if it persists, go see your doctor. Remember, a lot of times things happen which are not necessarily tied to the vaccination. And because vaccines are such a big part of our lives right now, and it's a momentous event, and we're all going to remember when we got our vaccine. We go, hey, wait a minute, I got vaccinated 2 days ago. Is this related to that? It may be, it may not be. But go ahead and take an antihistamine and go see your doctor if the problem persists.
And we also had a viewer asking questions. Where can I go and get vaccinated? Obviously, if you wanted to get a vaccine,
Yes.
it's pretty easy. You just go to utmbhealth.com/vaccine, or you can call 877-389-2318. Good news, too, there is both CVS and Walgreens in our areas now are also offering the vaccine, and pretty soon Walmart will be offering that out of its pharmacies as well. With that, we're starting to see the expansion of where the vaccine's available. You were even saying that you have more vaccine for our hubs here than we can use right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, so typically they give us an allocation every week, and we go through that pretty quickly so that by the end of the week we have almost nothing left. But over the past 2 weeks, we've seen the demand go down for the vaccine, and we have plenty of vaccine left over. And so we'll probably have to order less for next week just to kind of even out our levels. But the most important thing is that we don't have a wait list anymore. There's no criteria regarding age or comorbid conditions. Anybody who's over 16 can get a vaccine. We've got plenty of spots. Let me tell you, this week is the week to do it, because you'll be able to go in, get your vaccine, and be on your way very quickly.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I know we just had a viewer tell us that they signed up with Walgreens today and got in today, in fact, out there. We've had some sporadic reports of folks, too, in this particular Houston, Galveston area of being already vaccinated, got both shots, but then test positive or have symptoms from COVID-19. Can you talk about that as well? Because there is the vaccine is not 100%. You're not going to get sick or test positive, and explain why that is.
Well, none of these things are perfect, and we'd like to have something that would be a perfect vaccine. But the two major vaccines we use, both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, are about 90%, 95% effective in preventing serious illness. That doesn't mean you don't get infected. You can still get an infection. However, when people do, it's usually a much more mild infection. So we have people that are asymptomatic who get infected after getting the vaccine. We have people who are who may actually have like a fever and a cough. But the important thing is that those people aren't getting sick enough to go in the hospital, and they're not dying. We do know the vaccines do prevent infection, about 80% after your first dose, about 90% after your second dose. So we have that little bit of a window between it prevents you even getting infected in about 90% of the people. And in those 5% that do get infected, they are less likely to have symptoms, and they're less likely to die. We used to say with flu vaccines, the flu vaccine isn't very good at keeping you from getting flu, but it's really good at keeping you from dying from flu. Well, the COVID vaccines are actually better. They're good at preventing you from getting COVID, and they're even much better at keeping you from dying from COVID.
And then we had the next thing up. We had something the governor said this week, and I just want to ask you: is we've now gone over 257,000 people vaccinated in our region. That includes Galveston County and Brazoria County. How close are we to herd immunity right now? Because that's kind of the end-all goal here at some point, right?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The first question is, what is herd immunity, and can we reach it? So we've been trying to get to somewhere between 60 and 70% of the people vaccinated, and we think that'll be a good number based on what we've seen at our healthcare personnel at UTMB. Is once we hit at 63%, the cases of COVID among our healthcare workers virtually disappeared. But there's no magic cut point with this. Some people are saying 60%, some people are 70%, some people are saying as high as 80 or 85%. So the idea behind herd immunity is that enough people are vaccinated so that it doesn't spread at all. And we don't know what that number is. And the fact that we're having these variants come in that may not be as sensitive to the vaccine, that we may be seeing a little more spread, and we may need more people vaccinated to reach herd immunity. That being said, our best guess, and the reason why I say our best guess is that there are lots of numbers floating around there, and we've been trying to audit them to make sure that we have the right number, and the more we audit it, the more confused we get. But that being said, we're somewhere around the 60% range of people getting at least one dose in their arm, and we know that 2 weeks after getting that one dose in your arm, it reduces the rates by 80%. So I think that's what the governor's alluding to. And of course, he sees things that we don't see and gets a much bigger picture. The most important thing is that our numbers are going down and continue to go down. And that's something we watch very closely every day and every week. Last week was less than the week before. This week, I had a little bit of heartburn when I opened up the report from over the weekend, and we're having like 60 cases a day, and I'm going, I hope this isn't going the wrong way. But we just have to wait and see on a week-by-week basis whether things are going down or whether it's starting to flatten out. But so far, it's starting to go. It continues to go down. So, have we reached herd immunity? I don't know. Is the vaccine working? I really think it is. Do we need to vaccinate more people? Absolutely. And like I said, we've got plenty of it. Don't worry about timing. Don't worry about that other stuff. Just come on in and get it done and get over with. This is your week. Come on in.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it opened up now. Now there's not unless you're you're younger than 16, there are no restrictions. I wonder though, because you and I spoke right before we went on the air, that right now the demand for the vaccine seems to be waning a little bit. Because you had so many vaccines available, not going to have the Walter Hall Park facility open tomorrow, I should say. Right. But it will be opened up. You moved some appointments there to Friday. So going to this is that, how much longer, one, will that mass vaccination drive-up spot, Walter Hall, be used? And we're going to see more of a transition to the clinical settings now versus the joint sites.
Yeah, well, that's the conversation we're currently having. And so we're going to be doing that on a week-by-week basis. But what I think you can expect to see is each week there may be fewer and fewer people going through that mass vaccination site. And then we also have to figure out how are we going to have a regular clinic, both at the health district, at UTNB. And also we're looking for other partners within the community that we can transfer our vaccine to so they can give it. And ultimately the goal will be is that anybody who wants a vaccine can go to their doctor, to their pharmacy, to their clinic of choice and go ahead and get it. And I think we're starting to see that happen. It's going to take a little while before we completely get there, but we're starting to see that happen. The other thing to keep in mind is that the FDA is likely to approve Pfizer vaccine for children 12 years to 16 years of age. And then a little after that, actually from about 7 up to 12 years. So when those two things happen, we expect to see more demand where families will be coming in and getting their children vaccinated. And we expect that to happen sometime between now and the beginning of school.
And on those for those younger than 16, is it one of those things that's the same dose of that the adult dose? Is it a modified version? I haven't heard much about that of what will get used there.
Yeah, we don't have a recommended dose yet, and so that's one of the things we're going to have to wait and see. But typically, when kids are about 12, they get about the same dosage that adult gets, but for the smaller children, it may be less, and we're just going to have to wait and see what those recommendations are. The one thing we have learned, however, which is very important, is that when they did the initial studies, they actually gave people doses that were much higher than what we're currently giving, and it didn't buy any additional immunity and had a little bit of increased toxicity to it. So that's why they went with the lower dose.
Yeah. And then we had a comment from one of our viewers here, which I think is, let me go find it back up here again. Here it is. This is the one, because it kind of relates to the show we did at noon today. It says, I get my second dose on Wednesday and I look forward to traveling this summer. And that's from Deanna McNeil. And so, we talked about this some last week. The CDC had said that it's going to be safe to travel again if you've been fully vaccinated. We just had on Roger Reese from the Port of Galveston and Claire Johnson from the GalvestonCruises.com talking about that right now. About the only type of travel you really can't do is cruise ships. I just wonder, where do you think that would lie? And I understand, as they get ready for that, have you been contacted for advice for things at the Port of Galveston for when and if in anytime soon?
Oh yeah, no, we've been having regular conversations with the Port of Galveston for a whole year. One of the things that we were concerned about was having outbreaks on cruise ships, and how would we handle that? And that actually turned out to be a very good thing. We never had an outbreak on a cruise ship. That's the first thing, but it was a very good thing because we all got to know each other and were talking to each other. And we've been talking all along about what that might look like when it opens up again. And ultimately, it's the call of the CDC. But don't be surprised if people are required to show a test within 72 hours of getting on board the ship. Don't be surprised if people are required to have vaccines done. And we've even had some cruise lines reach out to UTMB to say, hey, what if we wanted to do testing on site? What if we wanted to offer people vaccines through a single provider that we could verify that they had their vaccine? And so those discussions are starting as well. Our best guess is that CDC might consider cruising again sometime after the summer's over in November, but we don't know exactly when that'll be. My wife already has tickets for a cruise, which she is very, very anxious to use. So I'm going to hear it if we don't get this thing working.
Well, and I wonder, you had said this last week. Let me ask you, if a cruise line had adopted a policy of that, in order to get on board, everyone, including passengers and crew, had to be vaccinated, would you get on that ship?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. I think the risk would be relatively small, but it wouldn't just be people being vaccinated. It may be vaccinations plus some sort of test. It'll be social distancing on board the ships. There's no way we're going to avoid that, and so you're going to have your mask on when you're in the common areas, except when you're eating. So a lot of stuff that we do already, I think, will get incorporated into the ships. And I think that they've had enough experience as well to learn how to react when something happens. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Does it mean it's going to be 100%? Of course not. It's not going to. Nothing in life is 100% safe, but I think it would be safe enough that when time comes, that people can go cruising again.
One of the things I found this an interesting story. I wanted to bring it up to you. Regeneron is asking to take a look at its antibody drugs that are out there that with the right cocktail that can prevent COVID-19 for folks that may not have been vaccinated. Right. Do you see more and more of that come out? And do you think that that's sound science that you're hearing from those companies?
Oh, sure. Of course it's sound science in the sense, but the question is, how long would it last and how effective would it be? So, we know that Regeneron and other type of antibodies that actually clear COVID from the bloodstream and help blunt infections. And now there's a new product where it doesn't have to be given IV, it can be given IM. So that opens up a whole host of possibilities. It means that if you're sick with COVID and we diagnose you before you need to go to the hospital, all we got to do is give you a shot and send you home instead of having to have you come into an infusion center and get an infusion. But it also brings up the idea of can we prophylactically give it to people to help prevent it? And if you can, then the next question is, well, who do you give it to and what are the conditions? What makes it medically appropriate? You got to keep in mind, though, that these antibodies that they give you, they don't last forever. They only last for a few months. We do ask people that have been treated with Regeneron and other antibodies that they not get their vaccine until at least 90 days after they got that infusion. In large part, we want the vaccine to be able to work inside their body, and if you kill it with these antibodies, the vaccine won't work. So it's a good idea. It's not quite ready for prime time. Don't expect that, hey, I'm going to go get my shot so I don't have to get my vaccine and I'm just going to go do what I want and get that on demand, because I suspect there will be medical criteria around which we can give that to people.
Here's an interesting one. I hear this question a lot, and I account it to most of the really poor messaging that was done on masking early on. It says, if the vaccines work, then why are we still wearing masks?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks have the impression that wearing the mask is for me. If I got the mask on, it's for to protect me.
Yeah.
It's really the opposite way, is it not?
Right. The idea is that if I wear, well, it does help protect you, but it also keeps other people from spewing COVID on you. So vaccines work 95% of the time, all right, and prevent infections about 90% of the time. So that means for every 100 people that get vaccinated, 10 of them could get COVID and potentially pass it on, all right? So they're not likely to get sick and they're not likely to die, but about 10% of them could get COVID and pass it on. And so while we're still in this phase of trying to get as many people as we can vaccinated, we're still recommending that people wear masks because it will help, one, protect the spread, but we're also worried about these variants that can escape the vaccine. So how does that happen? How does a variant of the virus escape the vaccine? Well, you get the vaccine and then you happen to be one of these people that doesn't have great immunity and you get infected. You have enough of a response there that the virus changes and mutates, and then it goes out and it's a little stronger and it doesn't react to the vaccine as well. So we're kind of in a crucial period of time where we've got to do both until we can get enough people vaccinated. But hopefully once we reach that point where we don't see very much COVID at all, then we can ditch the masks. I'm tired of it too. Everybody's tired of it. And but we're not quite there yet. So we just got to keep gritting our teeth and doing what we got to do.
When do we get there, though? That's going to be the big question, obviously. And
right.
I know it's asking for your crystal ball again, but
yeah. Well, if our numbers keep going the way we are, we should be at a very good spot come summer. But there is a chance that we could see numbers spike up again, in which case we really have to be very diligent about getting masks. I think this is something that the answer to that question will really be driven by the numbers of cases we see, not some theoretic number that somebody has made up.
When we talk about the numbers of cases we see, one of the things I just got the report from the health district where, over the weekend wasn't a high number of folks being coming back, not anything like what we saw earlier this year with the number of people coming back. It was 120 additional cases.
Right.
We were seeing that really, on a half a day basis for the longest time from there. But I've noticed too, it seems like the number of folks getting tested has really dropped off significantly. Well, does that concern you at all? Because we're not able to track as well, just kind of how our region is doing.
Sure. So in order to, so for example, let me give you an example today. Today, I saw the positive lab list, and there were about 40 positive tests, and there were about 480 tests total. So that means a percentage of less than 10%. And that's good because our percentage has been going down slowly, not down as quickly as we're seeing the numbers go down. So the real question is how well do we know that we're measuring that? And the answer is that we can, if we get anywhere between 600 and 1,000 tests per week, not per day, per week, we can tell within a 5% margin of error what the percentage of positive people is. And from that, make some sort of projections about how things are going. So when you look at the numbers, you don't just look at things in isolation. You look at the total numbers of tests per day. You look at the total numbers of tests on a weekly basis. You look at the numbers of tests in blocks each week, and you look at the percentage. And if all of those are going in the same direction, then you can feel confident that things are going in the right direction. What's really disconcerting to me is when one indicator is going up and another one's going down. And that makes me very nervous. And we've had that situation more than one time. When they're all going up, you know exactly what's going on. But right now, they're all going down.
Question from our viewer, Deanne Hunt, asked, and when we're expecting the approval of the juvenile vaccines. You were just alluding to that earlier. Is there a timeline that you've seen of when maybe the approval will come? I know it's Pfizer is kind of ahead of the game on that right now.
Right. So Pfizer announced, it's going on about 10 days now, that they had proven that the vaccine is safe and effective in kids over 12 or 12 to 16. They have to submit that to the FDA, and then the FDA approves that. So we're going to have to see what happens over the next several weeks. Typically, if the data is good, the turnaround time for the FDA is very, very quick. We've seen things get submitted to the FDA, and then 10 days later, we literally have the vaccine in our hands. But, just as an example, look at the AstraZeneca vaccine. There's been lots of problems with that vaccine in Europe, and both with their numbers and efficacy, and then some of the side effects that they've had. And the FDA has been sitting on that for probably 3 to 4 weeks now. And so if there's questions about it, they're going to take their time. And that's something that we just can't answer. Everyone in the know says they will be available before school starts. I'd like to see it happen before school ends, because that would give us a good opportunity then to go into the schools and get kids while they're there, and we could just line them up and do a whole bunch of them all at once.
And that brings up the next thing is about the return to school next year from all accounts, outside of some options that some of the school districts may offer to parents, like Clear Creek ISD is offering. If you think your child's been doing well online, it's an option for some to take that route, but there's some criteria there. Are we at a point in which the return to school will be in full effect, at least by the fall, where every campus in our area particularly can go ahead and have in-person classes for 100% of the students?
I don't know. Again, we don't know. So there's basically 3 scenarios. There's a scenario that everything keeps on going, which we're going, and we're back to normal by midsummer, and by fall, everything's fine. There is the second scenario, which is probably more likely, and that is that we will have much of it under control, but we'll have sporadic outbreaks. And then if that's the case, then what we do will really be driven by what we see. So specifically in the context of a school, and maybe schools overall are doing well, but suddenly we have this junior high school where there's a bunch of COVID cases. Well, if that's the case, what we would likely do is, that one place where they got a bunch, we'd probably close it for, a week or 10 days and really work on getting all the kids vaccinated and getting the place cleaned and getting them back to normal. So, and then there's the nightmare scenario, which is one of these variants comes out where it doesn't respond to the vaccines at all, and then we have to go back and vaccinate everybody all over again and go back to masking and social distancing.
I wonder if you can explain, when you talk about variants, where do those come from, so folks can understand? Because we hear the UK variant, and we hear the South African variant, the Brazilian variant, which has not been as prevalent in the US here, but there's actually 2 California variants now.
Right.
And it is, what is it about this virus that it's able to kind of just morph, for the lack of a better term, and adjust to where it's at?
Yeah. Now, all viruses do this, right? All viruses rapidly turn over, and as they make more DNA, they make mistakes in how they replicate their DNA and their RNA, their genetic material. And unlike humans, they don't have the ability to proofread those mistakes and take them out. So there are a lot more mistakes that occur than anybody realizes. And most of them end up that it's either it doesn't cause any difference or it kills the virus. But every now and then, one of those mistakes means that the virus is stronger, and particularly in the face of what we call selective pressure. And so a selective pressure would be an antibody directed against the spike protein, that one protein in the virus that the antibody attaches to. And so suddenly now that spike protein's changed a little bit, and the antibody tries to bind to it and can't do it, or it doesn't bind to it as well. And so that makes this virus more fit. And the spike protein is the thing that sticks in your nose and grabs onto your nasal mucosa and allows it to get inside the cells. So when you put all that together, where do they come from? They come from our noses. And so if one happens to evade the antibodies and maybe makes it more sticky to the inside of your nose, that virus is going to do better. And so this is happening all the time, millions of times a day. And, 1 out of a million times, one of these viruses comes out that is a little different, and it gains a little bit of advantage, and it spreads more. And so, the UK virus was one of those viruses that got that way in the United Kingdom, and the South African strain was one that got that way in South Africa. Like you said, we have 2 California strains. Wouldn't surprise me if we end up with a Galveston strain at some point. But the real question is, how much does it evade? Does that spike evade the antibody that comes onto it? And so far, the antibodies continue to bind to it and continue to neutralize it so that it kills the virus and that the virus goes away. But it is possible that one will happen where there's just the virus, the antibody can't bind at all, and then the virus does what it wants. And that's what people are afraid of. Hasn't happened yet, but it's a worry. And so we try and keep very cognizant of that and look at that very carefully to make sure it doesn't happen.
And one of the things that we're seeing is, in fact, if you look at our screen right now, folks, you see those kind of red little bops on the virus demographic we have, or graphic we have there, and those are the little protein spikes that Dr. Keiser is talking about. And I don't know why every time you explain this, my nose starts itching. I start reaching up here and it's itching every time you do it. Talk about a spike making it more sticky. But the variants that are out there, but there's tweaks undergoing, including I know of some clinical trials at UTMB with the Pfizer vaccine to look at making it more effective, whether it's like the booster or making it more effective against these variants of the. So this is an ongoing thing right now, correct?
Right. This is an ongoing thing. And the nice thing about the RNA vaccines, since they're totally synthetic, they're not made by growing them in something. They basically have a machine that cranks out the vaccine. They can make minute alterations in it very easily to test and then ultimately to put into production to get in people's arms if necessary.
Dr. Philip Keiser, the local health authority for Galveston County, has been on with us this afternoon talking about all things COVID-19. And again, if you need to or you want to get the vaccine, there is your contact. You can go online, utmbhealth.com/vaccine, or call 877-389-2318. 877-389-2318 is the number to call, but it's better to just go online if you can. utmbhealth.com. Should note out as we talk about this right now, and I'm going to pull it up as we're talking, so I'm stalling a little bit here. The city of Lamarck has announced that it's working with a group to make vaccines available as well. We'll get that up here for you shortly. I do know that today the health district was out at Barber's Chapel in West Texas City. That's going to be something we see a lot more often now, is it not, Dr. Keiser, of these kind of working with community groups to get it out into certain populations and into zip codes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the things we found is that by going into people's community, we kept people who may not be inclined to either get online and make an appointment or drive all the way up to League City or drive down to Galveston to get into one of the clinics. And one, it's in a familiar place. It's usually closer to their home. And the other thing we see a lot of is that people come in because their friends brought them in. You know, I don't know about this vaccine. Oh, come on, I'm going to go do it. Let's do it together. And people will do that. So, you know, if you're thinking about getting a vaccine, you know, go ahead and bring a friend with you because you'll be doing your both some good. But what we expect is that we will have vaccine available at a wide variety of places where people can walk in. But as we track where vaccines are given around the county, we're going to be starting to go into those areas. And we've actually already started, but we're going to continue to go into those areas and work with churches and community groups to try and get those folks that may be reluctant. Our biggest area right now where we have the least amount of vaccine being used is actually in the western part of the county, in the rural areas, you know, past Santa Fe and Alvin.
And this is what I was talking about with the city of Lamarck had put out, is that this is going to be offered tomorrow between 10 and 6 at Abundant Life Church. That's 601 Delaney Road. You do need to register online to get set up, or you can go by the library during regular business hours in Lamarck to sign up. The registration, there's your link there. We'll put it on the site too, because it's a long list, a long URL there. Or you can register online, but you can also call the Lamarck Public Library at 409-938-9270, or come in person there at 1011 Bayou Road. But again, this is a Pfizer vaccine available in the city of Lamarck. They're going to offer it at Abundant Life, the city of Lamarck, and Custom Care Pharmacy. It's going to be a drive-through setup at Abundant Life. That's happening tomorrow between 10 and 6. And again, the links there, we'll add it to our site here so you can go and buy that link as well along the way. So as Dr. Keiser was telling you, there's going to be more and more kind of these setups, making it available to other organizations such as pharmacies getting this. And when it becomes part of a more of a regular routine that we're used to, than say going in to a government-controlled vaccination site like we've been seeing so far. And there. So, Dr. Keiser, thanks for coming on with us. We always appreciate you coming on. Again, if you want to get the vaccine, again, the master list for the county is kept at utbhealth.com/vaccine, or call 877-389-2318. We will put up the list for you for you to find for the link, I should say, for the COVID-19 drive-through vaccination effort that's taking place in Lamarck tomorrow. And then hopefully some not too big bad news coming out, and we see some more people will get vaccinated out there. Again, they've moved some appointments to Friday. Still some openings in Friday too for you to get in there for your appointment if you've not done so. And again, it's open to all adults now. Essentially 16 and older. It depends on which of the vaccines is available, but for Pfizer, 16 and older, you can go ahead and get that and get it set up. Dr. Philip Keiser has been on with us like he does every week. We'll be keeping this up to date. Again, if you have any more questions, you can ask him before our show next week as well. I'm TJ Alds, I-45 Now.